Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layaq Siddiqui, the father of holoface. Part 55 Replayability Rewalking the Path to a Phi Pattern Claim. We began with pattern itself. What can be compared, what stays the same through change. The fourfold identity gave us the bones. A pattern is itself across transformations, and we can prove it publicly. We learned to measure without smuggling time, to remember without storing the past, to model without confusing map and territory. Part 51 built the firewall between layers. Part 51.5 protected the past from future rewriting. Part 52 reframed error as diagnostic signal. Part 53 taught us to correct while preserving lineage. Part 53.5 gave us a taxonomy of failure. Part 54 taught us that uncertainty is the shape of finite access. Part 54.3 distinguished kinds of not knowing. Part 54.5 showed us that instruments drift and must be calibrated. Now we face the core of public science. Can the path be walked again? The problem we now face, the unwalkable path. Imagine someone gives us directions to a hidden treasure. They say, go to the old oak tree, turn left, walk until you see a stream, then follow it to a waterfall. Behind the waterfall, you'll find the treasure. We set out eagerly, but when we reach the old oak, there is no left turn. The stream is nowhere to be found. The waterfall doesn't exist. We return and ask for better directions. The person says, oh, I forgot to mention, you need a special map that I have, and you have to go at dawn, and you need to know the secret password to see the path. But I can't share any of that. Would we trust this person? Would we believe the treasure exists? Of course not. The path cannot be walked. The directions are incomplete. The claim rests on private access, not public demonstration. This is the problem of replayability in science. A scientific claim is like a set of directions. It says, starting from these conditions, applying these transformations, using these tools, you will arrive at this pattern. If others cannot follow those directions and arrive at the same destination, the claim is not fully public. It depends on private access, hidden steps, or irreproducible conditions. It becomes an assertion rather than a scientific claim. Authority substitutes for evidence. Replayability is what turns claims from authority statements into public, checkable pathways. What replayability really is? Replayability is often confused with exact duplication. People think it means get the same number or produce the identical result. But in pattern science, replayability is deeper. Replayability means that the pattern path from declared inputs and conditions to claimed outcome can be independently retraced and checked. It is not about exact duplication, but about lawful reconstruction. Think of it like baking a cake. A recipe is replayable if someone else can follow the same ingredients, same steps, same temperatures, and produce a cake with the same essential qualities. It doesn't have to be identical down to every molecule. It has to be recognizably the same cake. If the recipe leaves out key steps, if it says bake until done without specifying temperature, if it lists secret ingredient without naming it, then it's not replayable. The cake may exist in the original baker's kitchen, but others cannot reconstruct it. Scientific claims are the same. They must come with a recipe, a complete set of instructions that allows anyone, anywhere, with the appropriate resources to retrace the path and arrive at the same pattern. What must remain stable for replay? For replay to be possible, certain things must remain stable. They must be declared so that others can replicate them. Windows and conditions. What was the access setup? The instrument settings? The environmental conditions? The time of day? The calibration state? Transformations. What steps were applied to the raw data? What filters? What corrections? What mathematical operations? Selections. What data was included? What was excluded? How were boundaries drawn? Boundaries. Where does the claim stop? Under what conditions does it hold? When does it no longer apply? Interpretations were relevant. If meaning was assigned, what mapping was used? What interpretive framework? Toolchain. What software was used? What versions? What hardware? What instruments? Randomness. If random numbers were used, what seed? What generator? Provenance. The lineage of the claim, where it came from, what previous claims it depends on. Each of these is a potential point of hidden dependence. If any is missing, the path may be unwalkable. 4. Why irretraceable claims weaken publicness? If a claim cannot be replayed, several bad things happen. It depends on private access. The claim rests on things others cannot see or do. It becomes an assertion, not a demonstration. Trust becomes authority-based. Instead of checking the evidence, we must trust the person who made the claim. Trust me, I'm an expert replaces here, see for yourself. Hidden dependencies remain hidden. If the path cannot be walked, we cannot discover where it depends on unstated assumptions, hidden selections, or undocumented steps. Error cannot be diagnosed. If a claim fails to replay, we learn something. But if it was never replayable in the first place, we don't even know where to begin looking. Smuggling goes undetected. Undeclared assumptions, hidden selections, undocumented transformations, all the forms of smuggling we've worked to eliminate can hide in an unreplayable claim. Replayability is not a luxury. It is the basic check of public science. Without it, we have no way to distinguish between a genuine discovery and a private fantasy dressed in scientific language. Replay can expose hidden dependence. One of the most powerful functions of replay is that it can reveal where a claim depends on things that were not declared. Imagine a claim that says, "We observed a new particle." When others try to replay the experiment, they get nothing. What's going on? Maybe the original detector was miscalibrated. Replay reveals that the claim depended on a hidden calibration error. Maybe the data selection was biased. Replay reveals that only certain events were included, and that choice was not documented. Maybe the analysis software had a bug. Replay reveals that the result depended on a coding error. Maybe the interpretation assumes something not stated. Replay reveals that the meaning assigned to the pattern depended on an unstated interpretive framework. In each case, replay acts as a detector for smuggling. It forces hidden dependencies into the open. It turns private assumptions into public problems that can be examined and, if necessary, corrected. Successful replay builds trust. Failed replay is diagnostic. Both are valuable. Failed replay is diagnostic, not destructive. This point must be handled carefully. A failed replay does not always mean the original claim was false. Sometimes the replay failed because the original claim path was incompletely specified. Sometimes a key boundary condition changed. Sometimes calibration drift entered. Sometimes the replaying team used a different scale regime, different interpretation map, or different hidden default in the toolchain. Sometimes the original claim was only valid in narrower scope than first realized. So failed replay is diagnostic. It tells us the path is incomplete, or underdeclared, or unstable, or too narrow, or not yet fully public. That matters because without replayability culture, communities often turn replay failure into personal conflict, prestige defense, or ideological combat. A better culture turns it into method refinement. Replay failure says, show us where the road vanished. An example across scales. Let us see replayability at work across different scales of reality. At the quantum scale, a physicist claims a new effect. The replay package must include the experimental setup, calibration records, data acquisition parameters, analysis code, selection criteria, statistical methods, and random seeds. Without these, others cannot replay the experiment. At the biological scale, a biologist claims a gene-disease association. The replay package must include the patient cohort criteria, sequencing platform, bioinformatics pipeline, statistical methods, reference genome version, and significance thresholds. At the medical scale, a clinical trial claims a treatment works. The replay package must include the trial protocol, randomization method, patient data, statistical analysis plan, handling of missing data, and subgroup definitions. At the climate scale, a climate model predicts future warming. The replay package must include the model code, initial conditions, forcing scenarios, parameters used, output variables, and uncertainty estimates. At the personal scale, a friend tells a story. To verify it, we need to retrace the path, talk to the same people, visit the same places, see the same evidence. If they say you just had to be there, the story is not replayable. The replayability principle. Let us state the principle clearly. Replayability is how Phi Pattern science turns claims into public, checkable pathways rather than authority statements. A claim that cannot be replayed is not yet fully public. In simpler form, if the path cannot be walked again, the claim is not yet science. Or even shorter, replay or remain private. This principle is foundational because it separates claims that can be checked from claims that must be taken on authority. It is the difference between demonstration and assertion, between public knowledge and private belief. What a replay package includes. A claim that aspires to publicness must ship with a replay package. Conceptually, this package includes all required inputs, data, settings, parameters, window and condition specifications, transforms and processing steps, selection and exclusion logs, toolchain and version details, randomness controls or seeds, output checks and expected behaviors, provenance references, declared boundaries, uncertainty notes where relevant. This is not bureaucracy. This is the infrastructure of trust. Without it, the claim floats free of checkability. With it, anyone can attempt to retrace the path. Replayability and provenance. Replayability depends on provenance, which we learn about in part 28.5. Provenance is the lineage of a claim, where it came from, what it depends on, what transformations it underwent. Replayability requires that provenance be preserved and declared. If we don't know where the data came from, what was done to it, and how we got from raw observations to final claim, we cannot replay the path. Provenance without replayability is just history. It tells us what happened, but not how to do it again. Replayability without provenance is impossible. We cannot retrace a path we don't know. Together, they form the backbone of public science. Provenance records the path. Replayability lets us walk it again. 11. Replayability as anti-authority principle. One of the deepest roles of replayability is that it blocks the substitution of authority for checkability. A senior scholar may be respected. A famous lab may be prestigious. A government agency may be powerful. A corporation may be technologically advanced. None of this removes the need for replayability. If the claim path cannot be retraced, the public is being asked to trust status instead of a path. Replayability is therefore democratic in a profound scientific sense. It says the road matters more than the title of the traveler. It says a claim becomes public not because the speaker is important, but because the path can be rewalked. This is one of the ways Phi Pattern science resists charisma and institutional mystique. Randomness and seeds. One place where replayability often breaks is randomness. A model is trained stochastically, but the seed is lost. A sampling process was randomized, but the draw process was undocumented. A simulation used probabilistic initialization, but the generator version changed. In such cases, the output may look stable, but the path cannot be properly replayed. This does not mean all randomness must be eliminated. It means randomness must be declared, controlled, or appropriately characterized. If chance helps shape the result, then the chance mechanism belongs in the replay package. Otherwise, randomness becomes a hidden co-author of the claim. Randomness is not an enemy of science. Hidden randomness is. Toolchains matter. A great many modern claims live inside toolchains. Software versions, package dependencies, hardware accelerators, compilers, firmware, image preprocessing defaults, database versions, numerical libraries, all can materially affect outputs. When these are hidden, replayability becomes fragile. A result may vanish simply because an update changed a default threshold. A statistical result may shift because a library altered its handling of missing values. An image segmentation may change because a normalization routine was silently updated. This is why toolchain declaration is not a technical obsession. It is part of the path itself. In older ages, scholars worried about manuscript copies and translation lineage. Today, we must also worry about code and environments. The principle is the same. The medium changed. The need for replay did not. Replay and refusal. If a claim cannot be replayed, it may need to be refused or downgraded. Not because it is false, but because it is not yet fully public. Refusal here is not punishment, it is diagnosis. If key settings are missing, if selections are hidden, if the toolchain is absent, if randomness is undeclared, if provenance is broken, then the claim may be interesting but not fully certifiable in public science. This is exactly how replayability links to the failure taxonomy. Unreplayable is a specific failure class. Replay refusal tells us the path is not yet complete enough for public checking. That is a constructive result. It points toward documentation, reconstruction, environment capture, and path repair. A mountain trail analogy. Imagine a mountain community mapping safe winter paths across avalanche terrain. One guide says, "I know the safe route." That may help locally, but a public safety system requires more. The route must be mapped, landmarks declared, snow conditions specified, danger zones marked, fallback routes noted. Others must be able to rewalk it. Otherwise, safety depends on the guide's private memory and authority. Science works the same way. A brilliant guide is valuable. A public trail is civilization. Replayability is how private pathfinding becomes public route. The deeper meaning, replayability as respect. There is something profound about replayability that goes beyond technique. Replayability is respect for the community. It says, "I have done this work, and I trust you enough to show you exactly how I did it. I am not asking you to trust me on authority. I am inviting you to see for yourself. Replayability is respect for the future. It says, years from now, when I am gone, others can still check this work. The knowledge does not die with me. Replayability is respect for truth. It says, I am not hiding anything. The path is open. Walk it and see. A science without replayability is a science that asks for trust without offering evidence. It is a science that depends on authority rather than demonstration. We are building a different kind of science, one that offers not just conclusions, but pathways, one that invites checking, not just belief. 17. The replayability gate. Because replayability is so central, it needs its own gate. Replayability certification. Any public claim must declare where material. Replay package availability. Where can others find the materials needed to replay? Stability conditions. What must remain stable for replay to be possible? Toolchain specifications. What software, versions, and hardware were used? Randomness seeds. What random generators and seeds were used? Provenance links. Where can the lineage of the claim be traced? This gate ensures that claims are not just asserted but made checkable. What we refuse. With replayability as a core requirement, we have clear grounds for refusal. We refuse any claim that lacks replayability where material has unstable or undeclared replay conditions, hides the toolchain or software versions, fails to declare randomness seeds, lacks provenance for key steps, substitutes authority for replayability, treats irreproducible claims as fully public. Each refusal protects the publicness of science. Hand off to what comes next. Replayability tells us that a path can be retraced. It ensures that the steps from inputs to outcomes are documented and checkable. But replayability alone is not enough. A path can be replayable and still be dishonest. The steps can be fully documented, but the documentation can be misleading. The selections can be declared, but the selection criteria can be chosen to produce a desired outcome. The analysis can be reproducible, but the analysis itself can be designed to hide what doesn't fit. We need something deeper than replayability. We need auditability. Auditability goes beyond retracing the path. It inspects whether the path itself was honest. It asks not just, can we do it again, but was it done right the first time? That is where we go next. Auditability will give us the tools to examine not just the reproducibility of claims, but the integrity of the process that produced them. Because a claim can be replayable and still be wrong. A path can be walkable and still lead to illusion. Auditability is how we tell the difference. We have added another layer to our growing science. We learned that replayability is not about exact duplication, but about lawful reconstruction. It is the ability to retrace the path from declared inputs to claimed outcome. We learned what must remain stable for replay: windows, transformations, selections, boundaries, interpretations, toolchain, randomness, provenance. Each is a potential point of hidden dependence. We learned that irretraceable claims are not fully public. They depend on private access and authority rather than demonstration. We learned that replay can expose hidden dependence. It is a detector for smuggling. We learned that replay failure is diagnostic. It tells us where documentation was incomplete, where steps were hidden, where assumptions went undeclared. We learned that replayability is respect for the community, for the future, for truth itself. A science that replays its claims is a science that can be checked. A science that cannot be replayed is a science that must be taken on faith. We are building a science that can be checked. Now we go deeper still into auditability, the examination of whether the path itself was honest. Because walking the path again is not enough. We must also ask whether the path was worthy of being walked. Always, peace be upon you.